What's up, motivators? Taren here. If you're thinking about doing an Ironman triathlon and you're wondering how much to train for an Ironman triathlon, stick around because in this video, we are going to discuss how much you need to train each week, how many weeks of training it's going to take, and we are going to fill out this weekly training plan to give you an idea of what the work is that you need to do to get you from wherever you're at right now across that Ironman finish line, which I guarantee if you get through this video and you apply what we're about to teach you, you're going to be able to get over that finish line feeling strong and confident. Let's do it.
My name is Taren Gazelle. In my late 20s, I was overweight, unfulfilled, and couldn't even run to the end of the block. Over the following 10 years, I lost 65 pounds racing triathlons, running races, cycling events, and world championships. But eventually, the suffer culture of endurance sports training caught up to me, causing health issues and injuries. Now, my company Motive and I are on a mission to help people live more fulfilling lives by reaching endurance sports goals using healthy methods. We can all kill it on race day without killing our bodies. Let's do it.
So, motivators, if you are thinking about doing an Ironman triathlon, you're probably in a lot of cases like most other people out there, like me. Like when I first went out for my very first run after being motivated to do a triathlon, having watched the Ironman World Championship on TV and being so moved by what they were capable of, that run was really humbling because I maybe was able to go out for 3-4 kilometers at most, and the concept of biking 180 kilometers and swimming 3.8 kilometers, 2.4 miles when I couldn't breathe, and running a full marathon at the end of that, it was almost insurmountable. But over the course of years, I figured out a training system and worked with really good coaches and built up my capabilities to the point that I was able to get to half Ironman World Championships and then go 9 hours 41 minutes in my very first attempt at Ironman, which I never thought I'd be able to go under 10 hours. And if I can do that after barely being able to run, I know that you can do it. So we're going to share with you a little bit of what you're getting yourself into so you can maybe feel more confident about being able to accomplish it. I guarantee that with the right training, you can do this too. So there is a link in the description below to this calculator that we created on our website. And all you have to do is if you go down, you can put in all of your parameters of your background in training and your goals and what race you're doing. And the calculator will spit out how many hours a week roughly you need to train and how many months of training you're going to need starting from scratch. So let's do this for an Ironman triathlon, and let's assume that you have no background and you just want to finish. Well, it's going to take about 12 months starting from scratch and about 7.25 to 8.75 hours of training. Now that is the total average amount of time, including just the build up at the start. When you're in the training, like the actual plan in the final 6 months before the race, it's going to be a little bit more than this because you've got some really big rides and runs to do. But that's all it would take from start to finish, about 12 months. Now, if you have different parameters like a modest background, like let's say you're very, very fit, but it is in MMA or a completely unrelated sport, you'd choose a modest background. If you're an elite endurance athlete already, you'd choose elite. And then the race goals are finish. I just really like just finishing for the first race that you go into as a goal. That's going to give you the least amount of training so that you can start wrapping your head around the training process. If you want to finish strong and have a good chance of like running across that finish line and having the race of your life, you'd click finish feeling strong. If you want to compete, I would say this is for somebody who's already done a number of races, you'd click on compete. But you can go click the link in the description below and play around with this yourself. What does a training plan actually look like during these 12 months and for that 7 to 9 hours? For that, we're going to go into our training app. You can check this out for yourself. You can try it for free for 14 days. Again, link is in the description below. From the homepage here, you would click your account, go to My Training Plan. You would click Add a Race, and let's say we go Ironman Training Plan. We're going to put this 6 months out because it's going to be about 6 months of just building up in general training. We've done other videos on that, but what does the actual Ironman training plan look like? Well, we set it as 6 months long, so let's set this as 6 months out. And then we're going to select an Ironman. And what the app will do is it will give you an indication of how much training you roughly have to do. And you can slide this back and forth and see how the week changes, and then you can see what is roughly appropriate and drag this back and forth and go, okay, well, I could probably do this amount of training and that's how the week looks, and then drag that up and drag it back and forth, see what's appropriate, and then if you really want, you can move the workouts around to suit your schedule. But let's reset to the recommended workout week and just go with the cross the finish line. That is the beginner training plan. This is what it looks like with a steady bike of 60 to 90 minutes on Monday, an intense run of 45 to 80 minutes on Tuesday, the main swim of 60 to 90 minutes on Wednesday, an intense bike of 40 to 60 minutes on Thursday, a strength session later in the day on Thursday. I like to have the strength session done after the main endurance workout of the day. I've done other videos on that, but that's how I like to set that up. A steady swim on Friday, the main bike on Saturday, and then the brick run afterwards, and then a main run of an hour and a half to 4 hours on Sunday. And again, if you want to change that, you can drag it up. You can go all the way to the end and see what maxing out a plan looks like. You can go down here and add specific workouts if there are certain workouts that you want to get, like you want to have a yoga workout thrown in there, but not ramp up all the training completely. So you can go in and customize it however you want. But what actually happens in each of those workouts? What do you do in each of those workouts? For that, we're going to go back to the board and fill out that training plan so that you can get an idea of what to do in each of those days to make sure you get to that race. And if you follow these guidelines, I guarantee that you're going to have a better experience than probably 80% of the athletes out there, because a lot of them, even if they are working with a coach, they're not working with a completely well-designed, optimized training plan that accomplishes strength, mobility, low-intensity training for building endurance, high-intensity training for building VO2 max. We'll get into that plan right now. All right, so let's start filling out this training week, and how does this actually look based on that mock training plan that we just created? Let's start filling this out at Monday, because training weeks go Monday to Sunday. On Monday, we had a steady bike, and I'll fill in what these are in just a second. Tuesday, we had an intense run. Wednesday, we had your main key swim. This is the big fella. Thursday, we had an intense ride. And then later in the day, a strength session. Friday, we had a steady swim. Saturday, we had the main bike. This is where you're gonna spend a lot of time, followed by a brick run afterwards. And then Sunday is your main run. Before we get into what each of these workouts are, I just want to explain sort of the idea of this week based on everyone with a common Saturday, Sunday weekend. If you are a shift worker and your shifts are otherwise, where your weekend are different days, you can start just adjusting this however you need. What I like to do is put the intense training that is shorter and a lot more punchy in the middle of the week, Tuesday to Thursday, for a typical schedule. This allows you to then have an easier day on Monday and an easier day on Friday. Then you have your big training sessions being your main bike and your main run on the weekend. Why we do it this way is because people have the majority of their free time on the weekend. This bike is going to get upwards of about 6 hours, followed by up to 1 hour brick run. So we want to make sure that you have lots of time for that. Also, the main run is going to be upwards of 2 runs in a day, being 2.5 and 1.5 hours. So that's a lot of time. You need a lot of time, so we like to do that on the weekend. We like to have this really intense effort here in the middle of the week, going hard, 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 but it's bookended by lighter sessions, just a steady bike and a steady swim. These aren't really going to take a lot out of you on Monday and Friday, so this is going to allow you to recover from 3 intense days and rest for the upcoming weekend, and then start again, recover from a couple of intense days, and be rested up for a few hard days. So as opposed to having to wait a few weeks for a rest week, or wait until you are dead tired to be able to take a rest day. You're constantly going through these mini cycles of a couple days to a few days of work and then a rest, and then a few days of work and then a rest, and a few days of work and then a rest. And it helps you balance the immense training loads required to do an Ironman triathlon. So let's just start going through what some of these are. Why Monday is a steady bike is because you're going to be a little bit thrashed from the weekend. But that doesn't mean that it has to be completely easy. What I like to do is figure out how do we get more time under tension, like more load on the body, without really damaging the body. So if I gave you hard intervals to do on Monday after being thrashed from a weekend of training, you'd hate me. You'd hate any coach that does that. A steady bike is low cadence RPMs on the bike of around 50 to somewhere around 70. This low cadence is going to be a lot easier to do because it's more strength focused as opposed to like really quick neuromuscular firing. So low RPMs. What this is also going to do is when you have low RPM cycling, your heart rate tends to be a fair bit lower. And what we do in this is roughly anywhere from 4 to 15-minute intervals at decently high power, not like super crazy high power, but somewhere around 10 to 20% over what you're going to hold on race day. This is going to make sure that your heart rate is a little bit low neuromuscularly. This is going to be a fairly easy workout to actually accomplish, and it's adding load to your actual training without being really like beat you up. So this is a good way to get in another session while not making it really taxing on your body. Let's go to the steady swim. The steady swim is anywhere from 50 to 70 minutes. And a steady swim is longer efforts. So as opposed to doing 50s and 25s and 100s with short rest, we're looking at doing 200s and 400s and 700s and 800s and like big, long, chunky swims. These are going to be lower intensity. They're going to be more focused on just swimming for a long period of time as opposed to swimming really intensely. So this is going to get you comfortable with swimming continuously in your race. Whereas the main swim, really big, really punchy, lots of effort, this is going to be more like your race pace. So again, it's not going to be nearly as intense. While we're talking about swimming, we will go over to the main swim, and this is going to be a little bit longer. This is going to be 60 to 90 minutes, and this is going to be more focused on shorter swims. So these are anywhere from 25s to about 400s at the longest. And because the efforts are shorter in the 25s to 400, the intensity comes up a little bit because you're not swimming for quite so long. You can put out that hard, intense, really like end this and feel, holy smokes, that was a really good swim kind of effort here. Then let's talk about the intense run and the intense bike. These two are fairly similar when you're in a training plan. We are going to focus both of them on about 2 to 8 minute intervals. This 2 to 8 minute interval range is the real sweet spot for VO2 max building. We can also do these 2 to 8 minute intervals with about a 4 to 1 work to rest ratio. So let's say we're doing 4 minutes on, 1 minute off. You can build up to that by starting with 4-2 and then 4-1.5, or 2 minutes and then 30 seconds. But gradually, as you build throughout both of these, you're making the intervals longer and the rest period shorter. This is going to get closer and closer to your actual race effort because you're holding speed for longer and longer periods of time. A lot of people focus on just the 4 to 8 minute interval year round. I think that that's incorrect because you need to spend time focusing on that shorter, punchier stuff. So starting at 2 minutes, and even in the off season, the base building season, we do a lot of efforts that are 15 seconds to 60 seconds, really intense. But as we get closer and closer to the race, the intervals get longer and longer, the rest gets shorter and shorter. And then the strength session is going to be about 30 minutes. And we've talked about this in other videos, so I'll save that, but it tends to be very mobility focused. We like to use kettlebells because for a grand total of about 200 bucks, you can get a few years worth of kettlebells that are going to keep you busy for a long period of time. Kettlebells are also really, really good for stability, for proprioception, for actual real functional movements without beating you down. So the big thing to note with this strength workout is that you don't want to end it feeling tired. Feel like you've turned on some muscles, like you've activated some muscles, but think of it as rejuvenation as opposed to building up strength. We just want to make sure that muscles are moving really well. Then let's get into the main bike and the main run. The main bike is going to start at around 2.5 hours, and it's going to build its way up to 6 hours. Sounds very intimidating to a lot of people, but I guarantee that if you follow this program, you will be able to actually accomplish it. We start at about 2.5 hours with almost all low intensity. Just go out, ride for 2.5 hours. And then we build and build and build, and as we get to 6 hours, we are starting to have intervals at the end that are as short as 10 minutes, maybe as long as 30 minutes. By the very, very end of the training plan, you'll be doing a 2-hour interval just slightly above race pace. These intervals aren't really, really hard. They're just about 5 to 10%, just barely above race pace. So going the low intensity for the majority of the ride is going to teach your body to build up that endurance, to access fat as fuel, be really metabolically efficient so that you have energy throughout the entire bike ride and the entire Ironman. And then by adding in those longer and longer intervals that take up more and more of the proportion of the workout as you get closer to the race, you are going to build the ability to hold race pace. The brick run afterwards is starting at somewhere around 20 minutes and then building up to about 60 minutes. And this brick run is very similar to the bike ride where we have longer and longer periods in that brick run, but I would actually say immediately after the start of the brick run as opposed to the end of the brick run, you're including time spent at or slightly above your race pace. This entire workout here is essentially like a mini version of race day where you want to end the bike feeling fairly challenged, fairly fatigued, legs a little bit wobbly, you've had a chance to practice your nutrition, and then you get off and run at or above race pace so you can start feeling what race pace is. What's appropriate to go on the bike? What's appropriate to go on the run? Did you fuel enough, or are you feeling kind of dry and you need a little bit of extra fluid? All of this is really going to dial in your race day. The main run being on Sunday, I like to have that after the big day on Saturday because you're going to run on tired legs. And well, guess what? You're going to run on tired legs during the race. So this run here, we build up from about 90 minutes to 2.5 hours. And then once you hit 2.5 hours, instead of going longer than 2.5 hours, we like to do what's called a split run, where we cap the first run at 2.5 hours. And then we have another run later in the day that starts at 30 minutes and builds its way up to an hour and a half. This makes sure that at the point where your body really starts physically giving out, we stop so that you're not running for another 90 minutes or 30 minutes on wobbly legs, on tired legs, likely risking an injury. We want to make sure that you're executing this workout fresh. The same way that we included longer and longer periods of time in the long bike and the brick run at and above race pace, we do that with this workout here. So use those principles and I guarantee that you are going to be ahead of many of the athletes that are stepping up to that Ironman race, because a lot of athletes who aren't using a coach, who aren't using a coaching system, are really just training for the sake of training, and they're not designing their week to be optimized. They're not designing their intervals in such a way that they build. They're not designing in rest, they're not designing in race pace intervals, and they're not scheduling the week to basically build towards being very similar to actual requirements of the race. So if you found this helpful, I'd love if you hit the like button below. If you found this maybe a little bit overwhelming and you want full guidance on what a training plan is, maybe you want to add in some additional workouts, maybe you want a little bit less of a weekly commitment, you can go over to our Motive Training app. There's a link in the description below that you can click on, try it for free for 14 days, and for way less than the price of a coach, you can get all of this excellent training with nutrition guidance, with all of the exact intervals that you need to do. All you have to do is the hard part of showing up and giving it your best every single day. So hopefully you found this helpful. Later, motivators.